To be authentic, you must dare to stand alone. Nietzsche believed that most people wear masks, living by borrowed values, afraid to face their true nature. Authenticity, he said, is not comfort. It is courage, the courage to question everything, to destroy illusions, and to rebuild yourself from truth. Only by creating your own path can you truly live, not just exist. To accept the fullness of life means to embrace existence in all its dimensions, the joy and the sorrow, the success and the failure, the beauty and the suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that true authenticity comes not from escaping pain, but from affirming life as it is, without denying or rejecting any part of it. He called this attitude Amor Fati, the love of fate. It is the idea that one should not merely endure what happens but love it, to see every event, even tragedy, as a necessary part of one's growth and becoming. For Nietzsche, only when a person learns to say yes to life in its totality can they become truly free and whole. Most people, he observed, live in resistance to life. They wish away suffering, regret their past, and fear the future. They divide existence into good and bad, clinging to moments of pleasure and trying to avoid pain at all costs. Nietzsche saw this as a fundamental weakness, an inability to accept reality. Such resistance breeds resentment and self-pity. When people constantly fight against what is, they become bitter, small, and spiritually exhausted. Nietzsche challenged this by saying that life's value does not depend on comfort or happiness, but on depth, on how fully one can experience and affirm it, even when it hurts. To accept the fullness of life is to understand that suffering is not a punishment, but a teacher. Pain is part of the same creative force that gives rise to joy. Without struggle, there can be no growth. Without loss, there can be no appreciation of beauty. Nietzsche compared life to art. Just as a painter must use both light and shadow to create a masterpiece, existence must include both pleasure and pain to be complete. Trying to erase suffering is like erasing the shadows from a painting. What remains would be flat, lifeless, and meaningless. Nietzsche's vision of life affirmation requires courage. It demands that we stop seeking escape in illusions, religion, or false hopes. He criticized philosophies that promised comfort through denial of reality, those that preached salvation in another world or moral consolation for pain. For him, such beliefs were symptoms of weakness, attempts to flee from life's challenges instead of embracing them. He wanted humanity to grow strong enough to face existence head-on, to dance even amid chaos, to say yes to everything that has been and everything that will be. This yes is not blind optimism. It is a profound acknowledgement that every experience, even the painful ones, contributes to who we are becoming. Accepting the fullness of life also means letting go of regret. Nietzsche asked his readers to imagine living the same life over and over for eternity, a thought experiment he called eternal recurrence. If this idea fills you with dread, it means you are not living authentically. You are wishing life were different. But if you can imagine reliving every moment, even your suffering, and with gratitude, then you have truly embraced existence. Such acceptance transforms pain into power. Every hardship becomes a part of your story, a piece of the art that is your life. To live this way requires a radical shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Nietzsche invites you to ask, "What can I create from this?" Every wound can become wisdom, every failure a foundation for strength. When you stop resisting life, you begin to see meaning in everything. Even chaos becomes creative energy. This acceptance is not passive surrender, but an active affirmation, a passionate engagement with the reality of being alive. Nietzsche's philosophy of Amor Fati is ultimately a call to love life, not selectively but completely. It asks you to look at the world, with all its cruelty and wonder, and say, "This too is part of me." It is an invitation to stop wishing for a different past or a safer future, and to instead celebrate the miracle of existence as it unfolds. To accept the fullness of life is to stand in harmony with fate, to find beauty in both suffering and joy, to live without resentment, and to transform every experience into a testament of strength and gratitude. To embrace self-overcoming is to recognize that the greatest battle you will ever fight is the one within yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that life is not about comfort or stability, but about constant transformation, the continuous effort to surpass your own limitations, weaknesses, and fears. He saw human beings not as fixed creatures, but as evolving forces, capable of shaping themselves through struggle and self-discipline. For Nietzsche, the goal is not perfection but growth, not peace but progress. Every obstacle, every failure, and every pain is an opportunity to rise to a higher level of being. Self-overcoming begins with honesty. It requires looking at yourself without illusion or excuses, seeing both your strength and your decay. Most people run from this confrontation because it exposes their insecurities and contradictions. They hide behind distractions, moral ideals, or the opinions of others. Nietzsche, however, believed that only those who dare to face their inner chaos can transform it into something powerful. He urged people to turn their weaknesses into strength, their pain into wisdom, and their struggles into art. Instead of denying what is dark within us, we must integrate it, control it, and use it as energy for creation. The idea of self-overcoming is closely linked to Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the overman, or the higher self. The Übermensch is not a perfect being, but someone who has transcended ordinary human limits. This person does not seek approval, comfort, or certainty. Instead, they live by their own values, created from personal experience and insight. To move toward this higher state, one must destroy the false layers of identity built by society, religion, and fear. Nietzsche saw destruction as a necessary step in creation. To build a stronger self, you must first dismantle the one shaped by others. Embracing self-overcoming means accepting that life will never be easy. Growth always involves pain. Nietzsche described life as a will to power, not the desire to dominate others, but the inner drive to expand, to improve, to become more than what you were yesterday. This power is not about control. It is about mastery. Mastery over your impulses, emotions, and limitations. Every time you resist despair, laziness, or bitterness, you exercise this will. Every time you rise after failure, you practice self-overcoming. Nietzsche admired those who could endure suffering without losing themselves, those who could transform hardship into strength instead of resentment. Most people, he believed, are content to remain static, repeating the same patterns, blaming others for their misery, and seeking comfort instead of change. Such people live as shadows of what they could become. Self-overcoming demands the opposite, to confront pain willingly, to treat it as a teacher rather than an enemy. Nietzsche often said that what does not kill us makes us stronger, not just physically but spiritually. Each challenge, if faced consciously, refines the soul and clears away weakness. Through this process, a person learns to trust their own power and to stand alone in their truth. But self-overcoming never ends. There is no final victory or perfect version of yourself. The process is continuous because the moment you stop striving, you begin to decay. Nietzsche's philosophy rejects the idea of a final destination in life. Instead, he celebrates becoming, the endless evolution of the self. Every stage of growth contains new challenges, new temptations, and new opportunities to rise again. The person who embraces self-overcoming understands that life's purpose is not to find rest, but to keep creating, destroying, and recreating oneself in an eternal cycle of transformation. To live this way is to accept the chaos of existence and turn it into strength. It is to welcome pain as fuel for growth and solitude as the forge of character. The one who practices self-overcoming becomes their own master, free from the herd and from their own past. They rise not because life is easy, but because they refuse to remain what they were. Nietzsche believed that this courage, the courage to continually surpass yourself, is the essence of authenticity, freedom, and greatness. To live beyond approval and fear is to free yourself from the invisible chains that control most human lives. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the desire for acceptance and the fear of rejection are the greatest enemies of authenticity. From an early age, people are trained to seek validation, from parents, teachers, peers, and eventually from society itself. They learn to measure their worth by how others perceive them. They modify their behavior, silence their opinions, and even betray their values to be liked or admired. For Nietzsche, this dependence on approval is a form of spiritual slavery. It traps individuals in a life of imitation, where every decision is shaped by external expectations rather than inner truth. Nietzsche saw this longing for approval as a symptom of weakness, a sign that one has not yet found the strength to stand alone. He called such people the last men, those who choose comfort over greatness, safety over freedom. They live small, cautious lives, always worried about fitting in. Their greatest fear is being judged or misunderstood. But Nietzsche admired those who could rise above this weakness. those who could bear solitude and remain true to themselves even when the world turns against them. He believed that freedom begins the moment you stop needing others to confirm your worth. The truly free person acts from conviction, not from the desire to please. Living beyond approval means understanding that human judgment is fickle and often shallow. What society praises today, it condemns tomorrow. If you build your identity on others' opinions, your sense of self will constantly shift and crumble. Nietzsche urged people to find an inner compass, a source of direction that does not depend on applause or criticism. This inner compass is forged through self-knowledge, reflection, and courage. When you know who you are and what you stand for, the noise of others loses its power. You become steady amid chaos, unshaken by praise or blame. However, escaping the need for approval also requires confronting fear, especially the fear of rejection and isolation. Nietzsche acknowledged that walking your own path often means walking alone. The herd does not understand the individual who refuses to conform. Such a person threatens the comfort of others because they embody freedom, and freedom exposes cowardice. That is why society often mocks or attacks those who think differently. Yet Nietzsche insisted that this solitude is not a curse, but a test, the fire through which authenticity is forged. In solitude, you discover what you truly believe, stripped of all pretense and influence. You learn to rely on your own judgment and to draw strength from within. Fear itself, Nietzsche taught, must be confronted rather than avoided. The goal is not to become fearless, but to act despite fear. When you act in accordance with your truth, even when it terrifies you, you reclaim your power. Fear loses its grip because it no longer dictates your choices. Every time you speak your mind, pursue your vision, or defend your beliefs without seeking approval, you grow stronger. This is the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy. Life is a struggle for self-mastery, and courage is the weapon through which you win that battle. Living beyond approval and fear transforms how you experience life. You stop chasing validation and begin to create from authenticity. You stop apologizing for who you are and start embodying it completely. Nietzsche's ideal human, the Übermensch, is one who no longer lives under the shadow of others' opinions. They act as creators of meaning, defining their worth from within. They do not rebel for the sake of rebellion, but because their spirit demands freedom. Their joy, their strength, and their peace come from living in alignment with their own nature, not from being admired or accepted. To live this way is to claim ownership of your existence. You no longer wait for permission to be yourself. You speak the truth even when it offends. You follow your path even when it isolates you. And you act with integrity even when it costs you comfort. Nietzsche believed that this independence is the highest expression of human dignity. It is the moment when you cease being a reflection of the crowd and become the light of your own life, fearless, unshaken, and completely free. To reject the herd mentality is to begin the journey toward true authenticity. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that most people live as part of the herd, a collective of individuals who follow social norms, moral traditions, and conventional opinions without question. In this herd, people seek comfort, belonging, and approval. But in doing so, they lose the essence of who they are. They stop thinking for themselves and begin to mirror the thoughts and desires of others. For Nietzsche, the greatest danger to the human spirit is not suffering or failure, but conformity, the quiet surrender of individuality in exchange for acceptance. From birth, society trains us to fit in. We are taught what is good, what is evil, what is normal, and what is strange. We adopt these labels without ever questioning their origin or truth. Schools reward obedience more than creativity. Religion defines morality. Media tells us what success looks like. Slowly, a person begins to think in terms of what others will approve of, rather than what feels true to their soul. Nietzsche saw this as a form of spiritual decay, a life lived in imitation rather than creation. The herd mentality makes people comfortable, but it also keeps them weak, dependent, and easily manipulated. To reject the herd mentality does not mean becoming arrogant or isolating oneself completely from others. It means learning to think independently, even when your thoughts go against what is popular or accepted. It means daring to say no when the crowd says yes, if that yes betrays your own truth. Nietzsche admired those who could rise above collective thinking, individuals who had the strength to bear solitude, to carry the weight of their own beliefs, and to act without needing validation from society. He called these individuals free spirits. the ones who break away from the chains of conventional morality and create their own path. But such freedom comes with pain. The moment you step outside the herd, you feel its rejection. You are judged, mocked, or misunderstood. Most people cannot tolerate this discomfort, so they return to the crowd, trading authenticity for acceptance. Nietzsche, however, believed that this pain is necessary. Only through isolation and struggle can a person discover their true voice. The path of individuality is steep and lonely, but it leads to inner power, the kind that cannot be taken away by the opinions of others. When you stop following the herd, you begin to see how much of your life has been shaped by fear. Fear of being different, fear of failing, fear of being unloved. Nietzsche invites you to confront that fear and overcome it. He challenges you to ask, are my beliefs truly mine, or have I inherited them without thinking? The answer to that question determines whether you are living authentically or merely existing as a reflection of others. Authenticity demands self-honesty. It demands that you strip away borrowed identities and face yourself as you truly are, without excuses or disguises. Rejecting the herd mentality is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is about integrity. It is about choosing truth over comfort and individuality over imitation. In a world that constantly pressures you to conform, to fit in, and to please, remaining true to yourself becomes an act of quiet heroism. Nietzsche believed that the future of humanity depends on those few who have the courage to think differently, those who are willing to walk their own path, even through the wilderness of solitude. Only such people, he said, can rise beyond mediocrity and become creators of new values, new possibilities, and a new vision of what it means to be human. To speak and act truthfully is one of the hardest and most courageous things a person can do. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that honesty, especially honesty with oneself, is the foundation of strength, freedom, and authenticity. Most people lie not only to others but to themselves. They hide behind masks, pretending to be better, purer, or happier than they truly are. They shape their behavior to gain approval or avoid judgment. For Nietzsche, this kind of life is a slow self-poisoning. When you live in falsehood, you become divided within, disconnected from your instincts and inner truth. Only by facing reality, no matter how painful it is, can you begin to live with integrity and power. Nietzsche saw truthfulness not as a moral rule, but as a sign of vitality. To be truthful is to be strong enough to look directly at life without illusions. Most people cling to comforting lies, religious promises, social roles, or idealized self-images, because the truth often hurts. It reveals weakness, hypocrisy, and limitation. But Nietzsche admired those rare individuals who have the courage to see things as they are, who would rather face an unpleasant truth than hide in a beautiful lie. For him, this kind of honesty was not about cruelty or cynicism, but about clarity. Only when the fog of illusion is gone can you truly see where you stand and what you must become. Speaking and acting truthfully means aligning your words and actions with your inner reality. It means living in such a way that your outer life reflects your inner convictions. This integrity creates harmony within the self, a state Nietzsche associated with strength. When you say what you mean and live what you believe, you become whole. You no longer need masks, excuses, or justifications. Your life becomes an expression of your truth, not a performance for others. Nietzsche saw this as the mark of a free spirit, someone who has the courage to live by their own standards and to face the consequences of their choices without fear or shame. However, truthfulness also comes with conflict. Society often punishes those who speak uncomfortable truths. It rewards conformity and flattery more than sincerity. Nietzsche himself experienced this isolation. His ideas challenged the moral and religious foundations of his time, yet he insisted that truth is worth the struggle. To live in truth is to accept solitude when necessary, to choose integrity over popularity. The truthful person may walk alone, but they walk with self-respect. They do not betray their conscience to please the crowd. Nietzsche considered this independence the highest form of dignity a person can achieve. Self-deception, on the other hand, was for Nietzsche the root of weakness. When people lie to themselves about who they are, they become fragmented and directionless. They pretend to love what they secretly despise or pretend to believe what they doubt. This inner dishonesty creates confusion and resentment. It prevents growth because it hides the reality that must be faced before change can happen. Nietzsche urged individuals to confront their contradictions, to admit their envy, fear, ambition, or desire, not to feel guilt, but to understand themselves deeply. Through such brutal self-honesty, one gains control over the darker parts of the psyche and turns them into sources of strength rather than shame. Truthfulness, for Nietzsche, is also a form of artistry. The honest person is not simply a passive observer of truth, but an active creator of it. By acknowledging reality and acting with integrity, you shape your life as an artwork built from truth instead of illusion. Your words carry weight because they come from authenticity. Your actions have meaning because they arise from conviction, not imitation. To live truthfully is to create beauty out of reality itself, even when that reality is harsh or tragic. In the end, Nietzsche's call to speak and act truthfully is a call to live courageously. It means tearing away the masks, confronting the self, and standing firm in what you know to be real. Such honesty demands strength because it exposes vulnerability. It strips away comfort and leaves only what is genuine. But through that exposure comes liberation. The person who dares to live in truth no longer depends on others' approval, nor fears their judgment. They become transparent to themselves, pure, self-aware, and powerful. For Nietzsche, this alignment of word, action, and truth is the highest expression of human integrity and the essence of an authentic life. To create your own values is to take full responsibility for the meaning of your life. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that most people live according to moral systems they never chose, accepting what society, religion, or tradition tells them is right or wrong. They inherit values like they inherit language, repeating them without reflection. But for Nietzsche, true authenticity begins when you stop borrowing the moral compass of others and start forging your own. This act of creation is not easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to stand alone in a world that prefers conformity. Nietzsche saw traditional morality as a form of control, a way for the weak to restrain the strong, and for the fearful to suppress the creative. He called this the morality of the herd, where obedience and humility are praised, and individuality is condemned as arrogance or sin. In his view, such values drain life of its vitality, making people ashamed of their instincts, desires, and ambitions. Instead of living fully, they repress themselves in the name of what others call good. Nietzsche challenged this by declaring that morality is not universal. It is human-made, born from human needs and weaknesses. Therefore, it can be questioned, redefined, and recreated. To create your own values means to become an artist of the soul. Just as an artist does not copy nature but transforms it, the individual must take their experiences, both pain and joy, and mold them into a personal philosophy. Every value you create should reflect your truth, not society's expectations. It means asking, what kind of person do I want to become? And then shaping your principles to guide that evolution. For Nietzsche, this act of self-legislation is the mark of the Übermensch, the higher being who transcends the moral framework of the herd and becomes the author of their own destiny. But this path is demanding because it requires the destruction of inherited beliefs. To build new values, one must first destroy the old. Nietzsche compared this process to climbing a mountain. You must shed the weight of tradition, superstition, and guilt to reach the peak. Most people never attempt this climb because it leaves them vulnerable and uncertain. Without ready-made moral rules, one must rely solely on inner strength and clarity. This uncertainty, however, is the birthplace of freedom. It is only when you stop living by other people's truths that you can begin to live by your own. Creating your own values does not mean rejecting all morality or living selfishly. Nietzsche did not promote chaos or moral emptiness. Instead, he believed in life-affirming values, principles that strengthen and elevate the individual rather than weaken them. These are values born from self-knowledge, courage, and creativity. For example, honesty may still be one of your values, but it will be an honesty you understand deeply, not one you follow because you were told to. Compassion, strength, and beauty can all exist in your moral world, but only if they are chosen consciously, not inherited blindly. The process of value creation also demands responsibility. Once you have created your own standards, you must live by them. There is no one else to blame when you fail and no one else to praise when you succeed. This independence is both terrifying and empowering. Nietzsche believed that this is what separates the weak from the strong. The strong have the courage to define and live their own truth, while the weak hide behind collective beliefs. To live by self-created values means to be the sculptor and the marble, constantly shaping yourself through experience and reflection. In the end, creating your own values is an act of rebellion and creation combined. It is rebellion against the moral codes that suppress individuality and creation of a new foundation upon which to build a meaningful life. It transforms existence from something given into something made, from passive acceptance to active authorship. Nietzsche saw this as the highest expression of human power, the ability to say, "This is good," not because someone told you so, but because you have lived, suffered, and discovered it for yourself. In the end, Nietzsche's vision of authenticity is a call to awaken, to live as a creator, not a follower. To be authentic is to reject the comfort of the herd, to overcome yourself again and again, to build your own values, and to embrace life in its entirety. It is to speak and act with unshakable honesty, and to live free from the need for approval or the fear of rejection. Nietzsche teaches that the highest form of existence is not found in comfort or acceptance, but in courage. The courage to face reality, to shape yourself through struggle, and to stand alone in truth. Authenticity is not something you find. It is something you forge, moment by moment, through the fire of self-awareness and strength. Only those who dare to live this way truly live. The rest merely exist.